All right, my friends, I think it is that time. I actually have 1 minute after, just about to turn 2 minutes after. Hopefully, you're all joining us. I think there's a button over here I can press to figure out how many have joined, but I don't know where that button is. So let me get started here, guys. We got a great informative hour for you, and I have some friends on the line with me here. Thanks for joining us for this live chat sponsored by our friends at BMC. Let me first introduce Gary Gross from BMC, and I'm going to let Gary tell us a couple things that are interesting about BMC, and in particular how if you're a remodeling contractor, why you might want to do business with those guys. And then I'm going to come back and introduce the other two builders that are with me, Wade and Jeremy, two longtime friends. But first, Gary, will you give us a little bit of intro about you and about your company, if you would?
Great. Hey, Matt, thanks for the introduction. Really happy to be here today, and BMC excited to be a sponsor today. And as we look at the Pro Remodeler and really help all of you that are on this call with your business, with your customers. I think, Matt, most people know BMC as a supplier, both in the building material and construction solutions, really with our production builders, multifamily, larger custom home builders. And we operate in about 48 major markets, 19 states. And so we've serviced that segment or those segments pretty strongly with our assortments, everything from, tremendous millworking capability, doors, windows, lumber, building materials, structural component manufacturing, showrooms, design centers. So we have a lot of capability that we've deployed in that production side of the business. But what a lot of your viewers may not know is that we really look at the Pro Remodeler as an area that we want to continue to drive. And it's an initiative for us to build better relationships and increase that part of our business. And so we've put together a team over the last year and a half to really look at how do we dedicate more resources in our locations, dedicated to the Pro Remodeler, implementing technology to help in that management with those accounts and their business. And also looking at operational improvements. How do we make sure we can get deliveries out to the job site? How can we make pickup at locations quick and efficient? Increase the speed of our quoting and bidding, because we know that the Pro Remodel business and those on the call, your customers, speed and being able to react to that's really important, and being flexible. So we're really dedicated towards building all of the things that we need to do from a capability standpoint in driving a better relationship and assortments, and making sure we have the right assortments with our pro customers. So I can tell you BMC is dedicated both today and in the future, Matt, as we drive forward and really enhance this segment. We want it to be a bigger part of our business, and we're investing in key markets, and we'll continue to expand. We know you've been a key customer for many years, so thank you for that. And we'll continue to.
Gary, I actually was your customer before I started. I've been in business 15 years now, but prior to that, I worked for another builder for 3 years in Portland, Oregon, and that's how I got to know you guys, was the Portland, Oregon market. You were our sole supplier on lumber, millwork, and windows in that market in the early 2000s, and I had such great success with you that when I moved to Austin, Texas in 2005, you were one of the first companies I sought out as I was building my home building company. And for those of you who don't currently purchase from BMC, one of their big core strengths, I think, is that they have fantastic people. They've done a great job hiring over the years. And I have a guy at BMC who's my guy, that when I've got new projects coming up, I shoot him an email and say, here's what we got. Let's talk about this one. And he knows me super well. Their whole organization knows me super well. I've got my preferences ready to go. And they stock and find for me the crazy things that I sometimes ask for. So, Gary, thank you for being a great partner in my business over the years.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And thanks for letting us host today, and really excited about today's webinar, and continuing to really do what we've done for you for all of those Pro Remodel customers out there. So really excited about it.
Good deal. Well, let's get going, shall we? Let me introduce these two handsome dudes here. We've got number one, Wade Paquin. Wade, it's weird that you don't have your hat on. I this was a hat on event. Wade is a friend of mine. I met Wade. There it is. All right, good. I met Wade at the JLC show maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and really started to become friends through Instagram randomly. And then Wade now has joined my Build Show network. He's shooting video. He's shooting the Build Show in Rhode Island. He's a coastal builder. And I remember the very first time I walked one of Wade's jobs, and I actually made a video on it. I was blown away by the level of craftsmanship that Wade's doing on these coastal houses. He did a shingle style house. What's the name of that video, Wade? Do you remember? I can't think of that name.
Coastal something on the YouTube channel.
Anyways, I'll try and send it out on social after this. Wade and his crew, amazing craftsmen. He's actually been in business a little longer than I have. I think you started in 01, right, Wade?
Yeah, that's correct.
And I started in 05. So looking forward to hearing your perspective from Rhode Island. And Wade's like me. He does a little mix of both remodel and new construction. I think you probably do a little bit more work than I do, actually. I think you're a slightly bigger organization. And then Jeremy is actually a good friend of mine here in Austin, Texas. We compete for some work sometimes. Anytime there's a male model role, though, he always wins. I mean, look at that headshot. What a handsome dude. I mean, I need to start doing my headshots like that. Look how fat I look, and he looks so good in his. He's such a stud. Anyways, him and his partner, Chris, business partner that is, are crushing it. They're doing fixed price work here in town. And we often compete on interviews, and he wins some and I win some, but a terrific competitor and a great company, and has been a friend for a long time. So I'm looking forward to hearing his perspective, which being a little different from mine because I do mainly cost plus. He does mainly fixed price. With that, guys, the first question, we have kind of a couple themes that we're going to be talking about today. And I think the first theme that I want to talk about, and if you looked at the sheet that we send you, the first thing we talked about was how to adjust your sales, marketing, and operational processes to align with the new normal. And I kind of want to spin that into how do we take this craziness out there and adjust the opportunity potential that's out there, right? Anytime things change in a market, I think there's opportunities. And I think we're all going to have a little different perspective on that. But Wade, if you're willing to go first, why don't you take that first theme, and I'd love to hear what your perspective is from Rhode Island on the opportunity that this might present you.
Yeah, so for me, I've kind of gone back to my my roots a little bit with kind of getting down to the nitty gritty, right? Getting that old school, persistent approach to kind of knocking on the door, so to speak, right? You know, when I first started, I was wearing the tool belt. You know, it was hard to get my name established. It was hard to get an architect to give me a shot at, you know, a good sized project. We're obviously at that point now, but with things changing so much, I found that, you know, our strong relationships we've established over the years has set us up nicely, but the architects and designers, you know, they're all also seeing, you know, a little bit of a shift too. So just going back to those architects, those designers, being a little persistent with just trying to, you know, let them know we're there, we're hungry, and doing some different, like, I don't really do a heck of a lot of marketing. I don't do any paid marketing. I ran one, you know, editorial ad last year, but that was it. And, you know, we're using Instagram and Facebook because they're free. So we're tweaking things a little bit that's generated some new business, but those strong relationships have really started to propel us through this, you know, odd time. I still think there's going to be a little bit of a lull and a lag coming this fall, maybe this winter. So I'm trying right now to set us up to get through that now, right? If we wait, if we stall, if we just start to get too comfortable, if we're all established builders and we're busy, but if we get too comfortable with that, it's going to come back and bite us. So I'm trying to be a little proactive and strike early.
Jeremy, you're next on the same question, but I did forget to mention, guys, if you're out there on the webinar with us, we do want to get your Q&A. the place to do that, if you look in the bottom of your screen, there's going to be a chat feature and a Q&A. Don't throw your question in chat. Throw your question into that Q&A tab. Thank you, John Rick, for throwing the first one in there. And I'm going to be moderating those and throwing those out to the crew later. So as we're talking, if you think of something, throw something on there and question-wise, and then we'll get to it. All right, so Jeremy, same question for you. In this theme of kind of opportunity amongst chaos, what are your thoughts on this?
You know, it's funny, like when I think of chaos, I think of that's what we do for a living, right? As remodelers and builders of high-end custom homes. I mean, clients pay us to throw ourselves in the breach between what their hopes and dreams are and the realities of what it takes to build one of these complicated projects. So this is what we do, y'all. We every day we march out into chaos and we make it look easy, right? We choreograph this thing and make it look good. So I feel like this is built for folks like us. If you've been investing in building a professional remodeling company and you've built a professional team and you've established great systems and processes and you've built a reputation, you know, I think now is the time to search forward, actually. You know, now is not the time to cut back your marketing. I think now is the time to go all in on your marketing. You know, it's funny to say that though, because I think my initial human reaction was probably one that everybody had. It was almost like retreating into the foxhole, right? It was like, go to your safe place, everybody's hunkered down, nobody's going to the office. You're totally disconnected from your people and your clients and your employees and your subs. It was a weird time, you know, and I fault myself for staying in the foxhole a little too long. You know, you got to get out and go forward. There's no going backward now. And so I think the key thing for us has been when we're communicating with prospects, you know, no matter what's happening out there and how tough a day you're having, we're putting the good face on it, no baggage. We're going out there, we're projecting a lot of confidence. We are confident that we have built a team that can operate in this complicated environment. It is more difficult to remodel a home now than it was, you know, 90 days ago. All the more reason for clients to invest in a professional remodeler and to pay what it takes to get a professional remodeling team to run their project. And that's who we are, and that's what we're projecting. And so I think it's a chance for us to, in an up market where the markets are super strong, like it is, Matt, in Austin, right? I mean, it is cranking in Austin. It's hard to sometimes differentiate yourself in a super hot market, but in a challenging market, if other people are going backwards and you can step forward, I think it gives you a chance to sort of get some market share and grow your business and be confident and press on.
Yeah, I agree, Jeremy. You know, I'm in a Builder 20 group, and I had a Zoom. You know, we were supposed to be in Denver a couple weeks ago, and we did ours on Zoom instead. And I think of myself as still a relatively new company, being 15 years old. And one of the guys in my crew is a company that's like 50 years old, and he's the second owner of the company. He said in the last big recession, which for me was, I was a brand new company. I started in 05, the recession hit 07, 08. I was really trying to make a name for myself, struggling to get work. I was doing all kinds of dumb things, which I paid for later, including cutting prices sometimes. This guy said during the last downturn, at that point, they were, what, 30-some years old, 30-year-old company. They not only kept their prices, they even raised some of their fees. They took over jobs from other companies, and they went into meetings with the swagger of, we're the old established company, and in uncertain times, why would you want to go with the company that's not proven? We've already weathered some recessions. We're the company you should go with. And, you know, it's funny. I was kind of doing what you were talking about, Jeremy. I was honestly a couple weeks ago a little hunkered down, like, oh, gosh, what do we do in these crazy times? And it's kind of given me renewed energy, like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I did weather the last recession. So if you're watching this and you're a company that's been around since before 07, or in Jeremy's case, you started your company in the middle of the recession. And you, Jeremy, what year did you guys start?
Yeah, no, we started in 2010. I mean, it was pretty abysmal out there, you know, so we obviously had nothing to lose though, no place to go but up. But Matt, it's funny, I was supposed to be at my roundtable group last week. They were supposed to be in Austin visiting us. And so we did a Zoom virtual roundtable, and this whole idea of swagger, I like that term a lot. You know, this idea that, you know, you make your own market out there sometimes, you know, and I think Wade talked about it. You've invested all this time in building your reputation and your brand and your relationships, and you've made a lot of deposits in those banks, and now it's time to go get your withdrawals, right? And I think that's what we've got to do.
So on that same theme, Jeremy, you and Wade both, like I did, spent a lot of time selling jobs in the last recession. And I'm not saying this is going to be a recession. I don't think it is, frankly. I'm optimistic that as we come out of our shell in the fall, our economy doesn't have underlying issues. We certainly have higher unemployment now, but we don't have any of the same economic climate like we did and what happened to us as a nation in '07. So I'm curious if you guys could tell me your story of starting your companies and then also selling jobs or talking to people as a young company, potentially in a down market from 10, 15 years ago. Wade, would you give us that?
Yeah, if I'm hearing you right, like how I approached it 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah, and I'd love to know your story of starting your business, what you did in the first couple of years. You started in '01, so you kind of '01 was not a great year. Things started getting good right after that, and then went into the tank in kind of '07, '08. Talk to me about selling jobs and your story up into that time.
Yeah, well, I would say from 2001 to about 2010, I was still wearing the tool belt. It was me, and I didn't even have a truck when I first started. I was working out of the back of my Volkswagen Jetta, and got some jobs, made some money, bought a nice truck, and just kept plugging away for years. And eventually had a couple guys working alongside of me, scratching, digging, trying to get bigger and better jobs, trying to get in front of architects that would say, hey, you don't have much in your portfolio. Give us a call later when you've done a bigger job or big renovation. So, I mean, I was hungry. I'm a really motivated person and ambitious, so I just kept trying to knock on doors, trying to get somebody to give me a chance, because once you have that opportunity, if you do it well, more opportunities will fall in line. And I had that break in, I believe it was right around 2010-ish. It was almost a new house. It was basically like a 90% tear down, and then built a big house, like a 5,500 square foot house. Woo. And that put me on the map, and that got the attention of other architects in the area. And it was onward and upward from there. But, it's just funny how much of a roller coaster ride this business is, right? From where we've probably all started to where we are now. And the challenges then are in some ways similar to how they are now, but in many ways very different, right? But we're still trying to find new business. We're still trying to find new architects to work with. So that hasn't changed. That ambition and effort to continue to expand our network with architects is constantly evolving, right? We don't want to put all of our eggs in, 3 architects' baskets, right? So it's just been a wild, wild ride.
Can I ask a question on that? Actually, a question came in from Aaron Doherty that is exactly that question, Wade. How do you dive, or could you dive into some of the best ways to build relationships with architects and residential designers that will refer you work? I'd love to know what you've done.
Well, like I said, I mean, getting the opportunity is the first challenge, right? And then when you have the opportunity, you have to knock it out of the park, right? Because one thing I've learned, if you do quality work, you will always have work. And we don't really advertise, so word of mouth is huge, right? Your reputation is huge. So every opportunity you get, especially in your early days of trying to get those jobs and get established, you have to put 1,000% into it and give it your all, and just go above and beyond to really catch everybody's attention. Because if you're doing subpar work or just par work, they're going to move on to the guys that are going to be doing better work.
Boy, that's totally true, man. That's the best advice right there. That's the nugget that everyone tuned in for right there, Wade. Yeah. Jeremy, let me ask you the same question. What are some ways that you've used to build relationships with architects or residential designers at Risher Martin?
Well, I think, we were on the Wade plan there for the first couple of years, right? Me and Chris in the garage apartment, 90 hours a week, not making any money, right? I think we all started there. I think what we had to figure out early on is that, we spent a lot of time figuring out what made us unique as partners. Like, what did we believe in what do we think was the right way to sell and contract for and do pre-construction and deliver, a remodel? What were the processes around that? And so I think Chris and I have done a better job in the last 8 years than we did in the first couple of years of just knowing who we are, knowing what we're good at, knowing who the right Risher Martin client is, and knowing who the right Risher Martin architect is. And Matt, we work in the same market, so we know all the same people. And you and I compete against each other quite a bit. And what I think you and I figure out pretty early on is we know whether really it's a Reisinger client pretty early on in the project, or whether we know it's a Risher Martin client pretty early on in the project. Because what you and I are doing is similar, but it's also different, right? And the things that we believe in and the things that we value and the way that we hire and train our people and the way we shape our delivery process is just a little bit nuanced, right? And so I think what we got better at over the years is being better qualifiers of leads and not spending a bunch of time chasing a deal that's really a Matt Reisinger deal and I shouldn't be wasting any of my time on. And so I feel like we're putting more effort into fewer deals instead of, we're hunting with a rifle instead of a shotgun, right? We're trying to be a lot more dialed in about identifying who a true ideal client is, who a true ideal architect is, so that we can say to ourselves, we can work our hearts out for these people and we can make them raving fans of Risher Martin so we can get more referrals. But if they're not really a Risher Martin client and they don't want what we're selling, no amount of effort is going to fix that problem. And so, I think that, again, a natural thing to do if a recession is coming or in a time of crisis is just to try to be all things to all people. I think we should resist that urge and we should be the right things to the right people.
I think that's great advice, Jeremy, because it's the whole, quality over quantity thing, right? We've probably all made that mistake when we were younger and hungrier to just take on all those jobs and just figure out a way to get them done. And I know I could speak for hours on all of my mistakes of taking jobs that I knew in my gut that I should not have taken. And I either lost my shirt or I lost my shirt and my pants on it. So now it's about identifying your ideal client, making sure it's a quality client, the job's a quality job, and not just trying to take on everything, and resist, as Jeremy said, that urge right now to not just take jobs because we're in this kind of crisis chaos mode.
Well, that's for sure. Let me answer this one too. We're actually doing Q&A slightly early just because some of these questions are really good.
Yeah, I like Tom's.
Yeah, I like Tom's too. We'll get to that one in a second. I want to answer Aaron's question, though, about building relationships with architects and designers. That's been a huge win for me. When I started my company 15 years ago, I was doing spec houses. I kind of was trying to figure out what I was going to be when I grew up. And I actually hired an architect at the time as a project manager who was like, you should probably get architects. You should probably just go after architects. Because going after the whole general public as your possible client in a possible referral is really hard. Whereas if you potentially cater your business towards architects, there's only 150 of them or 200 firms in Austin, let's say. So now you've got a much lower number of people to market to. And honestly, that's kind of why I've done social media as long as I have. I started blogging, and then I switched to YouTube, and I've been doing Facebook and Instagram and all those for a while now. And part of that is because I have this separate business as a media business, but it's also to be relevant and to be in front of my target audience, which is architects who might refer me business. And so I think that's the key role in social media. And if you look at, I'd highly recommend, by the way, we'll put them up again in a little bit. You look at Jeremy and Wade's social media and follow what they're doing. They're doing great work. Wade puts a very, very large amount of time once a day and putting a post up about one of his projects. Sometimes it's a beautiful finish shot. Sometimes it's an under construction shot. His craftsmanship always comes through. He takes the time to really write a good description. And I guarantee you, local architects, local people that were going to refer him business are on Instagram. They're seeing every day this cool picture. And then boom, they get a project that day. They happen to be scrolling through Instagram 10 minutes earlier. Wade is top of mind. And then he's getting that phone call. And that's how he's driving his business. That's how I'm doing mine. And that's a big part of Risher Martin's strategy as well, staying top of mind. hopefully we got that for you, Aaron. We'll probably spend a little more time on that. Valen Quinmara, hopefully I didn't mispronounce that, Valen, has a really interesting question that I think we should answer as a group. What are your thoughts on possibly changing your pricing structure in the remodeling sector for clients recovering from the pandemic? Do you want to take that first, Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm not changing anything. I think we're in a tough business, and I always tell clients if they want to pay less, they got to tell me, how they want me to lessen my service, and I don't really understand how to downshift my service. I can't ask my project managers to give 80% effort for 80% pay. I can't ask my subs to show up and do 90% work for 90% of the money. It doesn't work that way. So we've got one system, and it's all in for the best result. And honestly, it's gotten harder to do that, not easier. So if anything, I think Matt said, maybe the prices are going up or staying the same. They certainly can't be going down. I think the race to the bottom with gross profit margins is the ultimate trap for a remodeler. We learned that one about 112 times in the first couple of years we were in business. I don't think that's a winning game plan. I think it goes back to, again, qualifying the client. If you got the right client and you're the right remodeler and they want what you're selling, then they need to pay fair market value for it.
Yeah, that's right. How about you, Wade? How would you answer that question? What are your thoughts on possibly changing your price structure in the remodeling sector for clients recovering from the pandemic?
Yeah, I'd echo everything Jeremy said. And, we don't do a heck of remodeling work. We do some renovation work, but, it's a 75% new construction at this point. But I just add to that I've learned from when we've remodeled and done renovation work, that there's so many variables and unknowns in those types of projects that you just can't price out. And even when there's contingency involved, it does help paint a truer picture of the cost at the end, but it's still risky for me. And that's why, 2-3 years ago now, we've gotten away from, the lump sum fixed price stuff and do only cost plus. And I will not do a remodel or renovation project unless it's cost plus. I have to protect myself.
It's interesting. That'd be a whole nother webinar, is cost plus versus fixed, right, with this crew here. Let me answer this one too, in thinking about changing your pricing structure. I would say in the 15 years I've been in business, almost never, or I can't think of a single time when someone's come to me and said, Matt, I want to build this 2,000 square foot house and I've got a $2 million budget. Do you think my budget's realistic? Can we move forward on this? No one ever comes with a realistic budget. I always use the shopping cart analogy. You can load up your shopping cart with T-bone steaks, or you can add 2 steaks, some baked potatoes, and a salad, and the price is going to be very different, even though the shopping cart is the same size. So no matter the client, no matter the beautiful photos on any one of our websites, I guarantee you there is some amount of price shock from the client when they realized how much what they wanted was going to cost. And there's some amount of value engineering on every project. I can think of a project recently that I was interviewing for, and the clients were showing me pictures from my website on a gorgeous house that I built, and the point was basically, well, those people didn't have to do anything. And I said, are you kidding me? No. We value engineered a bunch of stuff on that project. You just can't tell now that the beautiful pictures are done. But they cut out this, and this, and we changed this, and this. The point of hiring a good architect and a good builder is to get an amazingly beautiful project when you're done, regardless of what the final cost is, and regardless of the final kind of amount of steak in the shopping cart. So our job as builders is or as remodelers, is to remove that discussion about what's your fee, how much are you making, and change that to, well, let's figure out how to get what you want for a budget that you feel like is the right budget. Because I would say none of us have had a client who came in the door with those 2 things aligned from the start. Would you guys agree with that?
Never happens. And that's a whole other webinar aside from the cost plus is pre-construction, right? That's what you're alluding to basically, and that's what we're doing now is developing that pre-construction to, turn those dials, so to speak, and get the budget and the scope of work in a funnel and get it to come out together, and in hand in hand. So that's a whole nother discussion.
For sure. Hey, one of the questions that was one of the main ones we advertised that we would answer is, what are the steps that you need to take to ensure your business remains profitable kind of post COVID-19? And I think of us living in a post COVID-19 world now. What are the steps that either you've taken, Jeremy and Wade, or that you can recommend to folks for them to take in this post COVID world? Who wants to go first? Jeremy, will you go first on this one for us?
Yeah, and it's funny is, right after it hit, we always go into the year with our budget, right? So we have a pretty fleshed out forecast of what our revenue, our gross profit, our expenses, and our net profit's going to be, what we're projecting on a month by month basis, for the calendar year 2020. So the immediate first thing we did was just like revise that into a bunker plan, right? So we got shut down temporarily here in Austin. You remember, Matt, it was like a week where we couldn't build, and there was a lot of confusion around whether or not we were going to be able to build, whether construction was going to be an essential service in Austin. And so we immediately just hunkered down and we started looking at where can we cut costs, whether that be overhead costs, whether those be staff costs, whether we're going to have to do, reductions in pay for employees or benefits or things of that nature. And then very quickly, a week later, when we're able to spin the jobs up in a limited fashion, not in a full force fashion, we spun the budget again as our kind of revenue projection changed. So we went through like 3 budgeting exercises, in the last 3 months, really,
Wow.
because it has been such a fluid situation. Luckily, we had the framework kind of set up right out of the gate, and we were able to kind of turn a couple of dials to maintain profitability. The PPP thing comes out, which is a help. And so, all I can say is be super fluid. And I think the key that we learned from a lot of friends who went through the 08, 09 recession and was, whatever you think you need to do, you should have done it sooner. It's always easier to give money back later if you got it. But any cuts you make, it's got to be quick and it's got to be decisive. And luckily, we didn't have to make them. We were ready to make them, but we didn't make them. So we're just fortunate.
Let me piggyback on that before you go, Wade. I learned a bunch of lessons in the last recession, like don't buy a new truck right before the recession hits. Don't start an expensive spec house before the recession hits. I lost to the tune of $300,000 in the kind of 09, 010 time range. And it took me a long time to pay that off between my personal credit card debt and the spec house that I couldn't sell. And I'll tell you, I've been incredibly debt averse ever since. I finally paid off my debt in 2015. The only debt I have now is this house. I still owe $140,000 on it, and that's the only debt I have in my life right now. I've paid off everything else. And I drive the same truck. That truck that I bought relatively new is still in my driveway. It's 12 years old now, and my Toyota runs great. So I would say be debt averse. And also this is a great time potentially to look at your personal finances. We've realized that maybe we don't need to eat out every night of the week. We don't need to take fancy vacations, whatever it is. I took a hard look at those things in my life. And honestly, I took a hard look at my own kind of selfish desires during that time. I was about to break ground in a big house for my family right as the recession hit. And I paused, and thank God I did, because had I kept going on that house would have been taken from the bank from me, and I would have been in worse shape than I was. And ever since then, I've had much more modest desires for my house. For instance, paying it off first before I do another one, although I'm building one now, but that's a different story. Wade, how about you? Steps needed to ensure your business remains profitable post COVID-19.
Yeah, I think you guys are hitting on some key points. I would just say, to the fellow contractors and remodelers out there, because I was guilty of it for a long time, and that's not paying attention to your business numbers and metrics, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's key. Trimming fat, do you need that shop space? Do you need the storage unit? Do you need 3 iPads? Like just these random things that just add cost. Do you need them? Just take a look at it. And one thing we've done when we transitioned over to Cost Plus a few years ago, we've also, to the previous question about, pricing and costs, increase your rates, but take your costs that you have, for whether it's a laborer, carpenter, project manager, and, we're taking that basically going ×2. So we're trying to, make up some difference with our rates as well, which really helps.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm gonna before we get to the number 3 on here, I'm actually gonna throw out another question. Gosh, we've got lots of real good questions, y'all. Thank you for posting these. Aaron Doherty, another real thoughtful question. Are you having any success with virtual consults to open the lines of communication with potential clients? Would you answer that one for us, Wade? Have you done any virtual consults with prospects, and what has that been like for you?
I'm trying to think if I have.
Interesting. You haven't, it doesn't sound like, huh?
Yeah, I don't think I've not. No, I haven't had a virtual. I mean, we've had some phone calls. We've got a couple leads. A few of them came from Instagram. We've had like 3 new inquiries in the last 2 weeks on new builds. But yeah, I haven't had like, a Zoom meeting with a potential new client yet.
Interesting. I feel like I've had a ton. I'm shocked to hear you say that.
Yeah. We're
How
keeping
about you,
it old
Jeremy?
school. Keeping it old school with the phone.
Yeah, you are. How about you, Jeremy? Have you had any virtual consults with prospects?
Yeah, I wish I could report that I thought they were amazing, but I thought they felt a little flat. Part of our, this is a high trust sale. People are spending $1 million or $2 million to remodel a house, or $800,000 or whatever. Like, shaking that hand and looking them in the eye and giving them a tour around your office and letting them meet your team and just sitting across the table from them and being able to read the body language and stuff like that and the signals. Like, it was hard. I wish I could say that it was good. I felt like it lacked a certain dimension. You want to build rapport with these people, right? This is it's a big transaction for you as the builder and for them as the buyer of the building services, right? And you both want to kind of be able to feel this out. So we've tried it. It was the only option we had. I'm hopeful we won't have to do it much longer.
Interesting. So here's a quick story for you. I got a text from a realtor I know that's fed me a couple of prospects before. I don't know when it was, Saturday morning at like 9 a.m. Hey, I got this prospect. Is there any chance you could meet with him today? And I was like, sure, I'll send you a Zoom link. I didn't know what the heck Zoom was 9 weeks ago. And, I bought an account almost immediately. I use it all the time, like we're doing now. And I had a fantastic 45-minute call with these people. And at the end, I knew for sure they were not my client. And they knew for sure I was not their builder. I didn't have to waste my time going to the office. I wore this. I think I was like mowing the lawn a minute before. And it took 45 minutes and boom, we were done. And, I directed them to a couple of resources. I sent them to a builder friend that I thought was a good fit for them. I was like, this Zoom thing's fantastic. I didn't have to go to their lot and meet them there and realize after driving for 45 minutes that they were a terrible prospect. Boom, it was a Zoom call. And I was over with it. I was like, Zoom's awesome. I need to do all my initial consults with Zoom. And on the other hand, I had another Zoom call with another prospect a week or 2 ago. We had a great phone call. We really connected. I'm meeting them in person this coming week, and we're going to do a face-to-face. So I would agree with you, Jeremy. Face-to-face is better, but face-to-Zoom, is pretty good for that initial touch point. Are they a good client? Prospecting. What's the word? To qualifying kind of call.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you're using it to choke down your funnel to the best prospects, that's one thing, right? We do that usually by phone. It's a phone consult, right? It's not even a Zoom. But to set the hook on a big deal and to get them to trust you and you to trust them in order to commit to a 7-month pre-construction process and then a 13-month long build. I want to, shake a hand and meet a bunch of our people and see that they're not hiring just Chris Risher or Jeremy Martin. There's a whole squad of people here to support them. And
that's right.
Want to get them on your turf and show them what you do.
That's right. Hey, Gary, I got a question for you, man. Sorry I've left you hanging there for a little bit. From the perspective of a supplier, you're at a much higher level in terms of knowing where things are going from the supply chain side, which hugely affects us as remodelers. What's your forecast? What do you see happening over the coming weeks or months? Should we be calling our BMC rep and ordering windows long before we break ground on projects? Should we be ordering our next lumber pack now, even if it's not going to start? Or or should we be ordering our cabinets months in advance? What advice could you give us as a group of remodelers from the BMC perspective?
That's a good question, Matt. And it actually ties in, I think, one of the questions that I saw come in too is how do we deliver value to our customers pre and post COVID? On the supplier side, as you can imagine, you've got a lot of competing needs for the resources. So whether that be new production or using the same kind of products that we use in Pro Remodel. So we've really focused a lot on the supply side, and what we see coming, the production side's a little different because you have, large builds in process. And so you had this pipeline that kind of continued post COVID and the stay-at-home orders, with the feeling that will actually start to show up in the market more in the third quarter when it comes to the supply side. So I think on the Pro Remodel, we saw much more of a pullback early, especially in markets where you couldn't get, you talked about, Austin had a couple of weeks there where it was hard to get on the job site. So you really saw that hit, but then it picked up much quicker on the Pro Remodel side of the business. So as we look forward, there have been some areas. Doors has been one particular piece of the business that we are fighting others for so that we can take care of our customers. So we've had to, look at our business and financials as well. And we've tried to focus our resources around taking care of our customers. So one thing I would say is that do make sure you've got that relationship with BMC. And if you don't, would love to have you have that relationship so that as we take care of our current customers, if we do get into those kind of shortages or longer lead times, because a lot of the production capacity, either domestically or internationally, did get slowed up for months. And so I think you're going to see that hit a little bit later in the cycle. And it's been talked about before. You see some inflation in some of the building products piece going on. So I think, my advice is, stay very connected to your sales representative. Definitely get an idea of what the pipeline looks like, especially in areas like doors and windows when you go into that project. And Wade talked on a little bit earlier too on just looking at your pricing and thinking about some inflation in there, because I do think you're going to continue, and we see that getting constrained here later in the second quarter and into the third quarter. So a bit of a lag, and a lot of that really being driven by more of the commercial and production side. But and then you've got the Home Depots and the Lowe's as well that have really ramped up. You've got DIYers and their numbers have gone extremely high in terms of percentage increases month over month. Everybody's at home and wants to do a project. So we're spending a lot of time to make sure we're getting the right buys and able to hold a lot of inventory so that we've got that inventory for the projects. But there are certain manufactured items that we have seen that starting. Like I said, doors is one of them in certain markets, and it's not everywhere. It's kind of interesting. You could have doors in Texas, and you could have another product out in LA. But I think the advice I'd say is make sure you stay connected with your representative, and definitely think about that timeline, maybe being a little longer, especially on those non-configurables or custom type items that go into a house. And then, the pricing is always fluctuates, but I think, we continue to see that probably inflationary pressure staying there and then kind of leveling off in the second half of the year. So right now we're not seeing that continue to go up as we go through the rest of the year, but I think you'll see a little bit more until you get into that fall time frame and then kind of leveling off from
cool.
what we're seeing in the market. Yeah. So there is some constraint on the supply chain. That's probably our number one biggest concern, is to make it sure that we are getting the inventory to take care of our customers, the Jeremys and Wades and Matts. So we got the product ready.
Yep. I appreciate that.
You can also ask your local, my main lumber supplier. We went to them right away and said, we know you're getting updates. Can you pass those updates to us? So they're sending our VP of sales the VP of sales of our major lumberyard is sending us weekly updates on the supply chain, so we know what's going on. So don't be afraid to ask your vendors for that too, because they should be able to provide that.
That's great.
We can be a real partner in that. That's a great call out, Wade.
Yep. Let's answer Tom Ellerbrook's question. I think this is a really good one. What long or short-term trends do you see when it comes to homeowner needs due to COVID, i.e. larger homes, smaller homes, more office space, outdoor living, energy efficiency? all those things. You guys were kind of forecasting design trends here, which is not usually our bailiwick. But I'd like to know what you guys think. Jeremy, since you're the most stylish of the builders in the group, why don't you start?
The big one we've seen is home gyms. We've had a couple clients call us. We had one house we just finished. I mean, literally, they called. It's an older couple. They're nervous about going to the gym, but they're super fit people. And it's like, hey, what can we do to add one, convert a room, separate building? So that, and then we had another client who we were breaking ground, getting ready to cut the lot. And he was thinking about value engineering the home gym out. And of course, the home gym did not get value engineered out. And so, yeah, I think more than anything, again, we started this program talking about opportunity. I think we're in a great business to seize opportunity. People have never have come to this realization that, like, your home is a place for you to be safe with your family. Your home is now a place for you to entertain your family. Your home is now a place to educate your family, for you to work from home, for you to be fit from home. You know, you're cooking from home more than you ever have before. You want to be outside your house because you've been stuck in your house all the time. You may want to add that pool back into the budget that might have gotten value engineered out. And so I don't know that I have enough data points, and this is definitely not my bailiwick to predict that that's a long-term trend. But, you know, ultimately, I think people are realizing that there's no safe, you know, the stock market drops 34% in 1 month. You know, the Austin housing market did not drop 34% in 1 month. So I think people are going to think probably no place better to invest your money than a place that can be a store of value for you long-term, provide safety and entertainment and education and health for your family. I got to think we're in the right business, and it's our job to go out there and seize that opportunity.
Yeah, and I would piggyback on that to say during the last recession, I was exactly opposite of what Wade's doing now. I was like 99% remodel, 1% new construction. I did nothing but remodels. And oftentimes I get a client who said, I just want to do my kitchen and my master bath. And then that, you know, stupidly expensive, let's say $500,000 kitchen and master bath turned into a $2 million whole house remodel because the two doctors living in the house with no kids had the money. And if their kitchen was going to look amazing, why wouldn't they do their dining room? And if their master bath was going to be amazing, why wouldn't they do their master bedroom and their porch and put a new roof on it? Literally, that's a job I did in 2010 when I didn't have 6 pennies to rub together to pay my bills. I had a client who went from $500,000 to a $2 million job over the course of a year. I did another one of those a couple years ago. Same story, except it was $1 million remodel that turned into a $4 million remodel. They had the money. It didn't matter what the market was doing. Those clients are out there, so don't be afraid to do smaller jobs, even if we're used to doing bigger jobs. I was all about that as a young company, and those two paid off big time for me and helped me weather a pretty rough storm. Wade, how about you? Tell me about Tom's question here about kind of trends that you're seeing in Rhode Island or that you could foresee in the future when it comes to what people might do with their houses.
Yeah, I think, you know, like Jeremy said, it's tough to predict if it's going to be a long-term trend or this is just something this year or next year. But, you know, when you see Twitter and some of these other massive companies basically saying to all their employees, you don't have to come back to the office. You can work from home permanently now, even if we get over this thing and we get out of COVID, the COVID world. You're seeing more and more of that now. And like you guys alluded to, people are looking at their home differently. They're using it differently. And a lot of people are going to be working from home for the foreseeable future or maybe permanently. It depends on their type of job. So, you know, we're working right now with an interior designer and one of our cabinet makers to kind of offer like a package deal to go in and do, you know, home office, kitchen, things that people have been putting off, right? That tired kitchen, the tired bathroom, the kids are off to college, they got the guest bedroom now that could become a home office. Go out there, go back to your previous clients and see if they have any of those needs to do that. You know, go back to the clients that you've already won over, that you know, they've been very satisfied with your work and maybe they have a need for something like that, you know? So there's some creative ways to go about that.
Really smart, really smart. Hey, Gary, here's a question for you that is a great one. I bet everyone would like to know the answer. Aaron Dory is asking you, does Gary anticipate that supply chains will transition away from international sources in the future, especially items produced in China? And Gary, you could answer that specifically as BMC, or you could answer that in general as a representative of our supply, as our general supply chain.
Yeah, that's probably, I'll try to think of how I want to answer it, just as a general piece. I'll give you my view on that, and I think as it was used before, not necessarily my bailiwick when it comes to that. But I think from what we've seen with COVID, there's probably two things that we've talked about that will fundamentally change, and not just in our industry, but across. And that's, we all talked about it, doing more digitally. You know, as a company, BMC, we're finding that we can be just as productive having meetings like this versus getting on planes and traveling. So I think that's systemically going to change as we go forward. And that ties right into some of the earlier conversations around using technology. And then I think supply chain, I don't know specifically about China, but I do think all industries, including ours, is rethinking and looking at the supply chain, especially with innovation. And I see more innovation happening probably domestically. So I do think you'll see, it may not be a systemic change across the board, but I think there will be more supply chain risk assessments put in place. So when these are disrupted, it's easier to recover, if that makes sense. So I think looking at different sources and having backups versus having maybe all production coming from one area. So I do think there'll be changes in supply chain. I don't think that it will all move domestically, but I do think you'll see it as it's happened in other industries. It kind of moves around the globe, and then from a logistics standpoint, starting to put in more of a risk assessment around supply chain, so you can cut over or bring in supply from different places if you get this type of situation again. But I think it's not unique in our industry, but I think supply chain is going to probably be talked about here for the next 2 years with a lot of work done for all companies. And yeah, I do think it will change and be a little bit more risk tolerant going forward with now that we've experienced this. So yeah, I do see some changes, and I think we'll see it in a lot of industries.
Appreciate that, Gary. You know, here's another question that I have for the group that I think would apply to you too, Gary, that I forgot to ask. Actually, this is one of our original 3 key questions. What are some tips you can give for keeping current projects moving forward? Jeremy, Wade, why don't you guys start on the construction side, and then Gary, if you've got any advice for builders on this too, we'd love to know what your thoughts are on this question as well. You want to go first, Jeremy?
Sure. I mean, we stressed way back in pre-construction before we even break ground how critical it is to have made all the decisions, made all the selections, and locked down all the specifications so that we can get ahead of the curve on procurement to make sure we don't have things back ordered, stuck in customs, you know, it's been discontinued, things of that nature. Now more than ever, we're beating that drum hard, you know, and so if we have clients that are sort of struggling with making some of the selections, you know, this is our message to say, listen, you know, I told you it was critical 3 months ago, it's even more critical now. You know, if we can't get this tile that went from 12-week lead time to 16-week lead time, or light fixtures that went from 10-week lead time to 18-week lead time, you know, your move-in date's going to be impacted. And then just, you know, one of the things that we're selling in the market is we're expert project managers. You know, a project well planned is half built. And so, you know, more than ever, we're emphasizing to our project managers that, you know, you need to be seeing 4 or 5 weeks into the future instead of seeing 2 or 3 weeks into the future, skate to where the puck's going, and try to, you know, forecast some of these things as opposed to being reactive. You know, proactive project management is going to be critical now more than ever. And our clients are paying us to be professionals. And I think we got to deliver on that.
Let me brag on you for a second, Jeremy. One of the things that I think your company is among the most elite in the nation is really saying to clients and architects, designers, we're not going to start until we know what we're doing. And so if you haven't picked out all your tile, your appliances, whatever, we ain't breaking ground. And that is incredibly smart, not just to be profitable and to keep jobs moving forward, but think about how that strategy has turned out to be a huge benefit for you in this climate. And I'm one of those builders who oftentimes starts with very little go on, a napkin sketch and a couple other things picked out, and we'll get that, no problem. You know, we'll work with you. And yet that comes back to haunt you in these times when we don't know what's happening. And yet we're waiting on those things because lead times go up. So kudos to you, Jeremy, for being way ahead of the rest of the crowd on being organized and effective in that front. Wade, how about you? What are some tips you can give for keeping current projects moving forward?
Yeah, I'll just pick up on what you guys were talking about. I mean, I look at it, I agree with what you guys were saying. I look at it a little differently. With the cost plus approach and rolling in, I wish we had all those selections up front. And I always advise clients to spend the time up front to make those decisions before we start. But that doesn't always happen, right? It's rare. But and Jeremy, I'll steal your term, proactive project management, so key, because if we're forecasting that out and we're giving the client and the interior designer and the architect, deadlines to make those decisions and they're delivering, then that is in line with the project schedule, then we can keep things moving. And if the ball gets dropped, it's on them, and we got to find a way on our end to make up that time. But, that's basically how we're running things right now. We're forecasting ahead. We're ordering more material than we need. Our job sites are stocked. Some of them look like small lumber yards right now. And that's allowing, like our framing crews and stuff to just pull from on-site inventory instead of waiting for it to come. Even like our lumber supplier, they might be short-staffed. Instead of having 6 trucks on the road, they've got 4. And then one of those 4 drivers got stuck home working, homeschooling the kids, and now all of a sudden deliveries are messed up in the day. Those are the type of things we're trying to avoid.
Yeah. Gary, let's end with you, buddy. We're getting short on time. I'd love to know from your perspective, what are some tips for keeping current projects moving forward from your years in the business?
I think you heard 2 really good ones. I think the project management and the clear communication is key, as both Jeremy and Wade talked about. So I don't know if I can add too much onto that. I think I'll take the question a little bit, tilted a little bit in that not only do you have those current projects, and I do think that the project management, clear communication, and what Wade talked about is being ahead of it, even with quantities and thinking about probably more so today than before, mitigating some risks that could happen with supply. I think as you do that, it allows you more time. I think as important as keeping those projects going is how do you keep the projects coming, so you're prospecting while you're doing those. And I would just add, outside of the project management, which I really think helps drive a successful completion with your customers, that also allows you more time to prospect. And as Wade talked about before, calling past customers, having social media presence, all of those things, even diversifying your business, I think is also helpful in making sure that you've got that pipeline, is not only when you manage your current project, but you have a pipeline coming in after that one as well. And we talked about some of the technology, and if you don't have a website, you should have a website, and making sure that your customers, that you're there and the customers are coming to you, and that you can be prospecting those while you're managing the current project. So I think there's all of those, between your networking, diversifying business, reaching out to prior customers, are all things you can do to keep that pipeline going, even though you're managing the current project. So to me, when you look at all of the different businesses out there, in my experience, those are the ones that you see that, and as you guys all know, very, very successful when you can have that project management and clear expectations with your customer, and at the same time, you're doing everything you need to prospect and make sure that you're diversified in your business and your networking for those clients. And when you can balance those, that's that kind of perfect circle, if you will, of business coming in and then project and satisfied customers. So I'd say to look at it as kind of a system between the project management and the new customers coming in, and that whole ecosystem from a management standpoint. And companies that do that are, as all of you here, are extremely successful and have been for 15 and 20 years. And I think that's how you keep it going, at least from all the companies that I've seen or that we've been able to work with. Those are the companies that are around for decades.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate that insight, man. We are to the top of the hour, my friends. Believe it or not, an entire hour has gone by. I was just scrolling through the attendees and was shocked by how many of you I know. So Wells and Richard and John and Chris, and a bunch of you. Thanks for joining, guys. I think we had 100 or so people. We had like 300 sign up. So for those 200 who didn't make it, I'm sure something came out in your life that forced you to meet with a client or be on a job instead of being on this. This is being recorded. If you want to send this to someone, please do. You'll get a follow-up email from BMC. And BMC also has a great document they're going to be sending to you that Gary and his team put together, which are some bullet point kind of takeaways from today that I think would be great for you to share with your team, with your friends, with your builder remodeler buddies. So thank you for your great questions too. And huge thanks to Wade and Jeremy and Gary for joining us. Guys, if you don't currently follow these guys on social media, I think that would be a great way to get to know them. I'll throw all their social media places up here. I know for sure Wade, Jeremy, and I are very active on Instagram and also are using Facebook and Twitter. So follow us on those formats. I feel like I should do an outro to the Build Show. Sorry, my mind is melting. I almost said follow us on Instagram. Sorry, no, we're not supposed to do that, Wade.
Right.
What else do I need to tell you? I think that's it. Wade, Jeremy, Gary, anything else that y'all need to interject?
No, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on the Build Show. I can't help it. I know. It's my thing. All right, guys. Thanks for joining. We'll see y'all soon.
You.
Sorry for the answered questions that I didn't get to, but we got to a bunch, and it was a great panel. I'll see y'all later.